Hi, my name is Alicia and I am here today to help you understand the Brazilian Portuguese pronunciation. If you do not speak any Portuguese at all, you can begin with this video. I'm going to show you some examples of the pronunciation of Brazilian Portuguese. And if you want to keep on learning Portuguese from scratch, you have in the video description many free materials. So here in this video, I'm going to show you a list of words that people are actively searching on Google. So people ask how to say thank you in Portuguese. They ask Google, and I did some research and I am answering you. How do you say the words that people want to know in Portuguese? All kinds of words. And we begin with obrigado, obrigada. To say thank you in Portuguese, you say obrigado if you are a man. You say thank you, obrigada, if you are a woman. Okay? And pay attention that in Portuguese we have this sound of the letter R, which is obrigado. In English, you roll your tongue when you say, for instance, rice. Okay? You say rice, your tongue bends backwards. Okay? And in Portuguese, we do not do that, even though in some regions people do that, but it's not general Brazilian Portuguese, okay? So we are going to say obrigado, obrigada. And for that, you're going to have the tip of your tongue that is going to touch very quickly the front teeth, okay? You are not going to expel the air. You are not going to make any rolling sound whatsoever, okay? You are only going to say obrigado, okay? Just a quick touch of the front teeth with the tip of your tongue, okay? Just like this. Obrigado, obrigada, okay? And this is the way we pronounce in Brazil. And we also have desculpe. Okay, in Brazil, we pronounce desculpe when we say sorry. And the sound at the beginning of the word is like jeans in English. Desculpe. And I am stressing that this is the way we pronounce in Brazil, because Brazilian Portuguese and European Portuguese, they can sound very different. They do not sound like two different languages, but they do not sound alike. Okay? Generally in Brazil, we don't have many problems understanding people from other regions in Brazil. Okay, we talk Brazilian Portuguese. It sounds a little different in the north of the south, but it sounds Brazilian, and Brazilian sounds very different from Portuguese, European Portuguese. All right, so we're going to learn Brazilian Portuguese because I am from Brazil. So let's learn new words like muito. You may notice that Brazilian Portuguese is very nasal, and in order to say a lot or much in Portuguese, you're going to, use your nose. You will, do the sound more or less like a cow does, a cow moves by saying moo, all right? So the same thing in muito. That's the sound. And you see that there is a kind of vibration in this area when you say mm, all right? And the air goes up to your nose, which is why the sound is nasal. Muito. Okay? You don't have to make it so strong. You can say muito, okay, quickly. But so you can understand, think about a cow and do as cows do, all right? And in order to say very well, very good, you say muito bem in Portuguese. And to say okay in Portuguese, short and simple, tá. Okay? Tá. You can say let's go in Portuguese by saying bora. Bora lá. Both of them are correct. And people also want to know how to say cool in Portuguese. In Brazil, you say legal. Okay, it's slang, but it's very normal, okay? We use that word all the time, cool. So, legal. You may notice that the word begins with the same letters as it ends, but the pronunciation is different. You say legal. And in order to say no in Portuguese, you say não. Okay, a little bit like or mu sound. Okay, the nose is going to be an active part of this não word. Não. And also to say yes, in Portuguese, you're going to, use your nose. Okay, sim. Não, sim. All right? To wish Merry Christmas, in Portuguese, you say Feliz Natal. If you want to wish good luck, you say Boa Sorte. And if you want to wish someone a happy birthday, you say Feliz Aniversário. Anniversary is also aniversário, okay? But mostly you say aniversário to the birthday. And if you want to say, oh my God, you have many expressions in Portuguese, but let's stick to minha, nossa, and meu Deus do céu. Okay? Minha, nossa is actually my Virgin Mary, okay? Minha, nossa. And meu Deus do céu is my God in heaven, okay? So you can use both. And if you are surprised, you can also say caramba, okay? The pronunciation of this letter is the one that we have already learned, caramba. And you may notice that this sound is nasal, caramba. But here, you do not have any nasal sound. Open, caraca. Also, wow, okay, to express surprise. And caramba, caraca, they are informal words, but they are polite, okay? So it's not offensive, it's not a curse word. A curse word is caralho. And I am teaching you that because people do search for it in Google, so it's my job to give people the information that they want. So if you say caralho in Portuguese, you're using a curse word, which means penis, and you should pronounce it the way that I'm doing. Caralho. All right? And after that, you have beautiful things because the word is bonito, bonita, which means beautiful. Generally speaking, okay? Bonito if you're referring to something that is masculine. Bonita if you're referring to something or someone that is feminine. All right? So, bonito, bonita, beautiful, very generally. But if you want to pay a compliment to a man, saying that he's good looking, you say, você é muito lindo. Okay? So, você é muito lindo. Nasal, right? And if you pay a compliment to a woman, you say, você é muito linda instead. Lindo, linda can mean also beautiful generally, but it can be used to talk about people. So if you talk to a man or a woman, grown man, grown woman, you say lindo, linda. And you can also say fofo, fofa. Fofo, fofa is more cute, okay? You can say that a grown man is cute, a grown woman is cute, no problem, which is why the sentences are here for you. But also fofo, you can say that to a child, to a baby, or even to a pet, okay? So fofo, cute, and fofa, also cute, all right? And, Brazilian Portuguese is a very, beautiful sounding language, and it's adequate to talk about feelings such as the feeling of missing someone or something. Saudade, or also saudades with the letter S, Amanda, at the end, I'm sorry. And also, you can say that you miss someone by saying estou com saudade. Estou com saudades. Both are correct. And if you like someone, you can say eu gosto de você. Gostar is liking, okay? But it can also mean that I like you. I have romantic feelings for you. It can have this meaning too. Okay? It depends a little bit on the context, but gostar is to like generally. And if you really are in love, then you will declare your love by saying eu te amo. Eu te amo is that you're really in love with this person. A man or a woman, it doesn't matter. Eu te amo. And if you want someone to kiss you, you just go there and say me beija. Me beija. Alright? And you can say my love if you're talking to your lover. Then you say meu amor. And you can also call your lover baby, as you would in English. Okay? So in Portuguese, you say bebê. Bebê is a baby, a tiny human being, and also baby as my love. Okay? And, well, pay attention that here I said amor. Okay? And this is the way I pronounce this letter R at the end of the word because I come from São Paulo. Okay? And in the south of Brazil, we tend to pronounce it this way. But in many other regions of Brazil, people will say amor. Okay? And they will use the throat to say amor. It's the same sound that you have in English when you say hot. Okay? Amor. This is very common in Brazil, in most of Brazil. But as I told you, in the south of Brazil, we say amor instead. And, well, let's stop talking about our feelings and let's talk about the practical life with nome, which is name. Nome. You can say nome. You can also say nome. It depends a little bit on the region that you're in, okay? But it doesn't complicate the communication, okay? So you can say nome or nome and people will understand you perfectly. And for the word time, in Portuguese, you have tempo. Also, nasal, okay? Tempo. Question in Portuguese, pergunta. Pergunta. Quick, rápido. Okay? So pay attention. The sound is with your throat, the same way as you pronounce hot in English. Rápido. And you see this symbol here that is telling us that we should and we shall stress rápido. Okay? So we say rápido. This is the way to pronounce it. And the opposite of it, slowly, is devagar. Devagar. But as I told you, many Brazilians will pronounce devagar instead. It's also correct, but it's not the way we talk in São Paulo. Devagar. And you also have gato. Gato is a cat, okay? A male cat. So, gato. And gato can also be said if you're paying a compliment to a guy. So you say, instead of saying você é muito bonito, as we saw earlier, you can say você é muito gato. You are very cat. This is a way of saying you're cute, you're handsome, okay? And to a woman, you say você é muito gata. Okay? You are very cat. Because, well, cats, they are elegant and they are, well, okay. But you will not say that someone is a dog, okay? So if you say that someone is a dog, it's like in English, you are a dog, okay? So you're a womanizer, okay? So don't say that unless you mean that the guy is a womanizer, cachorro, okay? But cachorro is the dog. So you say in Portuguese, cachorro. With your throat, okay? Cachorro. The same way as in hot in English. Cachorro. And here you have the sound of sh, as in show in English. Cachorro. You can also say cão. Cão, also possible, okay? And this word is complicated even for native Brazilians, okay? So you have lagartixa. Lagartixa, okay? And people also want to know how to say octopus. in Portuguese, and the word is polvo. And mosquito. You have a lot of them in Brazil. Mosquito. And capivara. Okay, this is a very nice animal that you find in South America. Capivara. Okay, with the V sound. And you say piranha in Portuguese. Piranha. And you also have zoo in Portuguese. People do want to know how to say zoo. So the word is jardim zoológico. Jardim zoológico. And people also want to know how to say zombie in Portuguese. Zumbi. Zumbi. You see the sound? Zumbi. The number 0 in Portuguese, zero. And to say mommy, you say in Portuguese, mamãe. Okay? Only mother will be mãe. Just like that. Okay? So mãe, mother. Mamãe, mommy. And papai is daddy. If you just say pai, it's father. Okay? Papai and pai. And people also want to know how to say grandma. And to say grandma in Portuguese, you say vovó. Okay? And it's a different word from grandpa, which is vovô. Pay attention to the difference. Vovó, vovô. Okay, so it's different. Okay, do not mix them both. But if you do, well, people will understand you. Okay, and people also want to know how to say English. So the language English in Portuguese is inglês. Okay, also an Englishman is inglês. Okay, japonês is Japanese, and alemão is German. Okay, alemão, very nasal. All right. To say Brazilian, you have brasileiro, referring to a man, brasileira, referring to a woman. Brasileiro, brasileira. Okay, you do not pronounce this letter here. Brasileiro. To say street, you say rua. To say beach, you say praia. To say email, you say e-mail. I know it's a little strange, but e-mail. Okay? Well, we Brazilians, we do love vowels, okay? Which is why when we say words, when we're talking in Portuguese, but we add English words to our speech, we tend to pronounce them with our Brazilian way of speaking. Which is why if you talk to a Brazilian, he won't say internet if he's speaking in Portuguese. He will say internet instead. This is the way that we talk. If you ask for a hot dog in Brazil, you can say hot dog, people will understand you. But Brazilians say hot dog instead. If you want to do a picnic, well, you will say piquenique instead. And if you want a milkshake, you will say milky shakey. And so on and so on and so on. Okay? So the thing is that we Brazilians, we love vowels, and our favorite vowel is E. So when we say English words in Portuguese, we add some E's to the words, which is why if you say McDonald's, people will understand what you're saying, but the Brazilian will say McDonald's. Okay, this is the way that we speak. Okay, and well, that's normal, which is why you say email. Here you add a U sound, but that's the way that we speak. All right? And people do search for underwear in Google, and the word for underwear is roupa íntima. You see, íntima is stressed here, íntima. And pay attention to say coconut in Brazilian, you say coco. Okay, coco. And people also ask how to say poo. Poo is coco. pay attention. Coco, coco. Two different words. Same letters, but, well, the sound is different. Okay? Coco is poo. It's not offensive. It's not a curse word or anything. It's like what a child would say. Okay? So, pay attention to the difference. Coco and coco. All right? And people want to know how to say red in Portuguese is vermelho. And this is the way we speak in the south of Brazil, but in many regions people will say vermelho instead. And this is a very difficult word for Brazilians, which is hairdresser. And we say cabeleireiro. Cabeleireiro. And people ask how to say rainbow in Portuguese. Arco-íris. Arco-íris. All right? And rain, chuva. Chuva. To say pool, we say piscina. To say rice, we say arroz. Okay? So you're going to use your throat here. Arroz. And beans, well, bean, just one. Feijão. Even though arroz feijão is the dish where you have rice and beans. Okay? So you have arroz, feijão. Feijão, very nasal. Feijão. And this is a very difficult word for foreigners. It's maçã. Maçã with your nose too. Apple. And to say orange juice, you say suco de laranja in Brazil. To say coffee with milk, you say café com leite. Café com leite. The word for bread is pão. Okay, and it's very important for you to pronounce it this way. Pão. So you feel the hot air going from your mouth to your nose. You have this feeling, okay? And if you touch your nose, you feel pão, the vibration here. Because if you pronounce pau, which is very common for English speakers to do, you're saying a piece of wood, okay? A stick, a piece of wood. But pau is also a slang word, not very elegant, to say the penis, okay? So if you go to a bakery, you should ask for pão, not pau, okay? Because you will avoid misunderstandings if you do the sound pão, bread, not pau, piece of wood, and also penis. All right, many penises here, I'm sorry, but I need to explain that to you so you don't get in situations that can be a little embarrassing for you. So stay with me with pão. This is what you buy in the bakery. And you say ovo to say egg in Portuguese. Ovo. And açaí is the way you say the name of this berry. In the picture, you see a blueberry. I couldn't find a picture of açaí, but they look very similar. Açaí, with the stress on E. All right? To say yuca, you say mandioca, even though there are other words for it in Brazil because it depends a little bit on the region. But generally, you can say mandioca. You say cashew in English, but in Brazilian, you say caju. The sound is the same that you have in French when you have jour, okay? So you say caju, caju. And this is the way to pronounce, well, cashew in Brazilian Portuguese. Guaraná, okay? This is also a berry that you find in the Amazon region. And you say in Portuguese, banana. Okay, banana. To say banana, of course. And to say chicken, you have frango. Frango. you have churrasco. Churrasco is a Brazilian barbecue. You have the passion fruit, which is maracujá. Maracujá. And people also want to know the names of places. Some of them are in Portuguese, but you can pronounce it as I will pronounce to you. Belém, Açores, Douro, Tejo, okay, the river in Lisbon, in Lisboa, Tejo and Douro. And in Brazil, you have Rio de Janeiro. Rio de Janeiro. And my hometown, São Paulo. Okay, here you see pão, okay? This is the word that you shouldn't say if you say pão, bread, okay? And to finish this lesson on Brazilian Portuguese pronunciation, we have some names that people also are curious to know how are they pronounced in Brazil. So you have José, João, Jesus, Jorge, Joaquim, Guilherme. Okay, so these are just names of people. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and well, I'm very happy that you learned some Portuguese today. So if you like the video, like it, and if you want, you can also subscribe to the channel to learn more Brazilian Portuguese. Thank you!